I'm kind of excited about this one. It's been a few days, so I'm kind of remembering this as I go through it, but I was taking notes on the airplane of the podcast I listened to, and I sent the podcast in Discord, so if anybody has listened to any parts of it, let me know. Yes, Amit, you can roundhouse. Thank you. I'll be on stage. I can't roundhouse. I have to look pretty instead. Roundhouse, and I'll make sure either my mom or Jake will sweep the legs in Ronnie's place. Ronnie will sweep the phone. Okay. So, boo, brunette. I mean, that's Katie. So, she's brunette. So, boo. Basically. Beautiful. I'm glad that we're all on the same page. No. All right. This lesson today, everybody, it's about the secret to fear and anxiety, which is what the podcast is called as well. Let's get into it. Okay. Every time, a lot of stress and fear can come from experiencing emotions repeatedly. And did you know that every single time that somebody remembers the problem that they're facing, they're producing the exact same chemistry in their brain and in their body? So when we remember either trauma or embarrassing moments or something that like really got to us, when we're thinking about it, we are experiencing it as if the event was happening. It creates cortisol for us. It creates adrenaline for us, or whatever emotion it may be. But our bodies are actually feeling like it's happening again. So when we think about something 50 to 100 times a day, our body relives that many times a day. I don't know if you've ever seen someone that gets like stuck in like where they remember a certain event that happened, and they talk about it all the time, and it's almost like they start basing a personality off of this, or they start justifying that that's the reason why they do certain things the way they do. But when we experience it that many times, the trauma is no longer just in the body, but it's also in our brain. The thoughts and the feelings and the stimulation condition us to be branded within our past. So, why are we so this way? We'll say like, oh, I'm so this way because of that event, like 5 years ago that happened. Or, I grew up having this occur to me, and that's the reason that I'm this way. That's why I went through a relationship where I was cheated on, and that's why I can't commit anymore, and that's why I can't have feelings for anybody anymore. We start, because we have refelt that feeling so many times, that we start justifying and saying that that's exactly why we are the way we are. And people connect their identities to the past. When it feels like an emotion, we cannot distinguish it from memory. We cannot distinguish a memory from emotion. So it doesn't just feel like you're remembering something. It becomes personality trait. It becomes like ingrained within us, which I think is kind of crazy. A lot of the time, so this is what they were saying, because this all leads into like how we can change to become better for ourselves, right? And what they were saying is when somebody is saying like, oh, I'm like this because of this way, what the person is really saying is that after that event, I haven't been able to really change. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it becomes their identity. And when a person analyzes their problem with their emotions of the past, they make their brain worse. They drive it further out of balance. So if we can truly get beyond the emotion, we can actually free ourselves from the past. We can give up fear, the judgment, the patience, the emotion. Nothing can change that story until we change. We have to trade those for elevated emotions. Instead of remembering negatives, remembering positives, or different things like that. So what you'll actually see people start doing to be able to start making positive change within our lives is, instead of remembering the hurt, we start allowing ourselves to remember and start feeling gratitude, appreciation, love, kindness, care. When we truly open our heart, it begins to become coherent. But that's when you hear people say, well, I'm glad I had this experience. We start feeling grateful for the experiences we had because it made us the person we were. I mean, I grew up, honestly, with like a lot of things that I could have felt I mean, my dad was always in the hospital. There were different things, like lots of different traumatic things that came along with that. And when people ever ask me, oh, what would you change? What would you change, like, about your life? And I'm always like, well, I don't know. I actually think those experiences are what helped mature me and create me into the person that is what I am. Actually, because of my dad going through that, I was able to become an international awareness campaign, the face of an international awareness campaign, stand up for other people and helping find them research and different things like that. We think that we always should change things and, oh, maybe we'd end up better. But we should allow and feel grateful for the hardships we've actually gone through, because that's what made us the person we are today and the person that we can turn into. When we feel the emotion, our heart beats actually very incoherently, which is interesting. Did you know that when you're feeling certain emotions, like remembering pasts or traumatic things, Tita, thank you for having me, even the bad and sad help you. Exactly. They help you become who you are. But when we harp on feelings that create stress, anxiety for our bodies by reliving it over and over and over, reliving a traumatic emotion and looking at the negative instead of the positives of it, our heart actually beats incoherently. Our heart actually has a different beat to it, remembering those emotions. Absolutely, AJ. Hi, T-Dot. So when we feel love, gratitude, kindness, our heart actually beats more coherently. And there's a different cadence to our heart, which is kind of crazy that literally an emotion can affect the way that your heart beats in your body. It immediately informs the brain, essentially, that the trauma's over also. When our heart is actually telling ourselves that trauma is over, when you start learning how to feel love, kindness, gratitude, different things like that towards those emotions, when we can look at it from a different perspective, it resets our brain, our body for ourselves. When we look at the past, we can't see, like, we can see it from suddenly, wow, I went through all that to get where we are now. And that literally can come from a heartbeat and learning how to feel a different emotion. That's actually what we're learning how to do, is how to move past that trauma. Because what I started off saying is, did you know every time that, like, you're thinking through those emotions, when we allow ourselves to, like, relive and experience 50 to 100 times a day, your body feels the trauma like you do for the very first time again. And so we're trying to get over the anxiety and step outside of that, and that's what this lesson's all about. So to bring our bodies out of the past into the present, we have to see the anxiety, the depression, and the fear all dissolve. It actually brings the body back to homeostasis, where it can be recalibrated. Exactly, AJ. We can live in the trauma, or we can move forward. That doesn't mean that it's not there. That doesn't mean you didn't go through it. That doesn't mean it wasn't difficult. But by constantly reliving the same feeling, instead of learning how to see the positives and look back on it and be grateful you went through that because it made you the person you are, it keeps us so blocked. We can't move to the next adventure if we're always holding on to the past. Did you know that also 50% of the story, now this is a real statistic, 50% of the story that we tell ourselves in our past isn't even the truth. So half the time we're remembering things that doesn't even happen. Maybe sometimes it elevates, maybe sometimes it decreases, but we actually, 50% of what we remember isn't actually even the truth. It's why some people suppress it. Our minds completely bury it, and something will trigger the memory. Absolutely. I want to know why certain things happen in our lives that we don't deserve. Because people have control over their own actions that affect others within this world, I think, as well. And I think sometimes, in my opinion, this is in my strongest opinion, the people who go through the worst things in this world tend to, you either get stuck within that and you make it your identity, or you learn to appreciate it and you grow beyond that, and it makes you into the strongest individual. There's two routes. And we all can, we can choose one. So when we're retelling a story to ourselves that isn't even necessarily 100% true, we allow it to keep us from changing in present time. Did you know our bodies actually don't like to be in present time? We don't like to be present. And I'll get to this in just a little bit. In order for us to change, we have to be so conscious of our unconscious beliefs, which is the way that we've been programmed. Do you guys remember when I told you guys about like a person's iceberg? So when you look at a person, they're kind of like an iceberg. The tip is what we see, right? And sometimes there's all this, there's their beliefs, there's their trauma, there's all of these things that they've gone through that have made them the person that they are for all these years. And we just see the tip, and sometimes we think we can change someone right off the bat with just saying some things, but you forget all of this is here. All of this is here below their iceberg that makes them the person that they are, that makes fundamental beliefs courageous. Thank you so much for the heartbeat. That make them the person that they are. So, and a lot of the time, we're not conscious ourselves of our own iceberg and things that have happened to us that have programmed us for so long to think or see things a certain way. We have to become conscious and aware of our automatic habits that we have and behaviors that we want to overcome to grow into the person that we want to be. Because our body actually starts driving things for us. We go into almost like an autopilot where we do these things because it's so ingrained in us at a certain point. We start, I'm trying to think of an example of like what this hardwiring is that we could have. I guess I'll go to the next one and see if it stirs up for me. But most people are hardwired into behaviors and beliefs, and that's why we never see change in them. We have to be honest about our own iceberg and be so conscious of, like, to what that is for us. Saying like, oh, I do this. I see where I got it from. Instead of making excuses why we can't do this, we have to be able to be like, oh, I see where I got this from. I see why I'm untrustworthy. It's because of this. It starts with acknowledgement. It starts with being so ridiculously honest with yourself. You don't have to say it out loud, but even if you can at least admit it in your brain, you don't have to say it out loud. Sometimes we can't. But if you can at least acknowledge it within your brain about why we have these certain beliefs or mechanisms that have been so ingrained in us, and we see where we got things from, that is when we start stepping into true consciousness of ourselves. How many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? And that's going to be what the moment of change is. Mark. But they were saying, how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? And that's the moment of change. Sometimes we forget all of these things that do happen or the reason why, and we make different excuses or we justify, and we do all these things instead of remembering, acknowledging, and being conscious of the things that we do. And that's the moment that we experience change. And the thing is that's going to be uncomfortable. But we need to look at, sometimes when we feel something uncomfortable like that, we need to look at it and be like, oh, that must mean something. And dive into exploration with that. Confidence is going to come from being uncomfortable. It's never going to be comfortable. You're never going to wake up one day and be like, I want to try this new thing. It's going to be scary because your body and your brain are so ingrained into doing certain things that are maybe not good for you that it's going to be like, hold up, stop. We're not going to do that. We don't like this. That's against what I know. So you have to make yourself step out of that. You have to make yourself get a little uncomfortable sometimes. You don't have to do it with other people. You can just do it by yourself. But doing something with the interest of helping change ourselves in some way is a good way to see that there is a greater life full of love and good that can come in. If we want to arrive where we want, we have to leave the rest behind at some point. Consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention and noticing. Increase in awareness. You can gain increase in awareness by paying attention. So our default mode tends to be always busy. We're always collecting. We're always anticipating. We're always filling in the unknown so that we feel safe. Did you know that like it is literally ingrained in through human evolution? We like to predict things ahead of time. Through human evolution, we don't like to sit in the present. We're always thinking we're analyzing this person, that person, oh, this person over there, and then we're thinking about what we had for breakfast this morning. Oh, what should I have for breakfast tomorrow morning? Oh, I have this thing to do, and I have this later, and this thing the next day, and then I have this a week later and a month from now. And our brains like to do that. Our brains like to do that a lot because our human anatomy and like so much time through evolution, we don't like to be in the present. Being in the present puts us in a fight or flight. But if you can catch yourself going unconscious, that's a victory. The moment you start thinking ahead, the moment you start thinking of something else instead of just realizing what's right in front of us. The more that you catch yourself, the easier it gets. And all of a sudden we begin to pay attention to things we hadn't before. We get comfortable in the unknown and in the present. We really are so programmed that we are truly in the unknown that we are in survival. And instead we predict the worst case scenario to have the best chance at survival in that, to save ourselves from hurt, to save ourselves. Like we always predict the worst case scenario. And we create that in a reality in our head that if we do this, it's going to be the worst case scenario, but what if it's not? Because we have no idea. We're predicting the future in that moment. Because we don't know how to rest within the unknown. It goes against all of our biology and programming. So catching ourselves, thinking of this, the place, that, right? All of that. If we catch ourselves in that, Ace, thank you for the heart me. In that time, sooner or later, we stop firing those circuits within the brain that make us jump, this thing, that thing, predicting the future. Our brain will learn to stop firing those circuits. It takes our brain from an agitated state, because when we're doing that, it creates stress, it creates anxiety, your heart starts losing its cadence and it starts getting irregular. And that's when we're able to start feeling the same emotions again that do us no good and living in this and identifying as this thing and all this. But when we're able to start making our brain stop firing that by catching when we start drifting within our thoughts or different things, we become more coherent. We have a slower brainwave state and we move out of an agitated state. When we do this enough times, our brain begins to synchronize and it creates greater levels of wholeness. Our system moves into regulation. Stress comes out from being unregulated. When our body's unregulated, stress begins. People can actually get very good at this within a few days. And the side effects is they start getting very relaxed in their heart. They get more creative. When you start getting more relaxed, our brains actually are able to unlock creativity. Our brain gets, and we can rest within that present moment. So, what does it mean to change? What they said it means to change is to be greater than the conditions in your environment and to be able to think, act, and feel differently within your same environment. I prepare for the worst, but what if the worst never comes? Look at we put ourselves through for no reason. Exactly. We put ourselves through so much. We create so much stress. And that is exactly all of those things that we're doing. This is about figuring out how to become conscious, because consciousness is when we can create change. Consciousness is when I said that your brain starts paying attention to things you never paid attention to before. That's when we start paying attention to the maybe self-detrimental things that we're doing, and you're able to catch yourself that because you're not thinking of so many different things that your brain misses the self-reflection. Our brains are never able to look inward if it's always looking outward. And self-reflection and looking at our habits and the things that we do that aren't good for us and the toxicness that we can create in our own lives is what stops us from making change and growing into the person we want to be and finding that confidence within. You can't be very confident when you're constantly so far ahead of yourself. You can't catch up. But when we can bring everything back, when our hearts can rest, our body can get out of this and go to rest and digest, our mind calms and it actually steps into a state of creativity. We have to be greater than our body as well. To be greater than its drives, greater than its emotional responses, it's memory, emotions, the emotional reaction, it's habits. We can become so automatic because the body learns to think greater than the mind. Your body will actually take over before your mind and start creating action before you can even think. And that's not necessarily a good thing. We want to be able to think clarity before we take action on anything, right? We want to be able to think, analyze situations, make clear choices for ourselves. So if we can train it back to that we are greater than the body and that the mind is in control, the body actually begins to liberate energy because it's not using up all of its energy. It's not using up all of its energy. When your body is driving things due to habits, due to the stress, the anxiety, right? That affects your entire body. Your heart being irregular. When your heart has a cadence, your entire body steps into more of a similar cadence and it feels regulated, it feels good, and your body isn't exerting as much energy any longer trying to run things because your mind is doing the work. So if we aren't thinking about time, where we need to be, where we were yesterday, where we at, where we are now, like where we can go from somewhere to nowhere, when a person gets that and they're not thinking about that, they become pure consciousness, which is opening our awareness to nothing and sensing space, sensing what is around us. And they were saying you can do this through meditation and different stuff like that. By the way, Tris, someone can give me a compliment. Steve was just being nice. We wait for something to go wrong to make us say that we are ready to change oftentimes. And dude, I hear this from nobody else more than like Jake. Nobody else more than Jake. And Jake is always like, oh, well, I'll learn when it happens. When something goes wrong, then I'll learn. Then I'll make that change. Why do we have to learn from getting hurt or from having things not go right? Change is about becoming, I'm trying to see the next part. Yeah. We can learn it at any time, in any place in our lives, and suddenly we become aware of the blame we place on things. Sorry, I mean, you can repin that. I just didn't get to read it yet because I'm finishing this. But suddenly we become aware of the blame we place on things and the way that we might complain, and we make that change that we need. Because when we're so focused on blaming other people, when we're so focused on complaining about things, we don't know how to make that change. We don't know, like, when we're so worried about blaming everything else and it's never our fault, can't ever get past that, right? Well, I'll rather think the worst and have an okay time than think the best and let others and myself down. But here's my thing. You can't be confident when you're thinking that way. Does that make sense? Because you're stressing yourself out. You are stressing yourself out so bad that you'll let yourself down more times than if your body can think clearly and begin creativity and make the change to not care what others think, to not allow that to affect you. You can't move into that change without that. Many of us hurt ourselves before others do to protect ourselves. That actually makes no sense. That's exactly, a lot of the time we hurt ourselves before others do. We'll take opportunities from ourselves. We'll take friendships we could have had from ourselves, all because our brain is predicting the future and moving out of a state of consciousness and thinking so many different things instead of just learning to be present and appreciating what we have in that moment. But once we can step into more pure consciousness, we finally have a roadmap. It gives you a roadmap finally. When you're not changing, we're still choosing, but you tend to choose the familiar. When you're not changing, you're just choosing you're still making choices, but you're just choosing what's familiar for yourself. The moment that we decide to make a different choice, we are going to feel uncomfortable. And if the body has been conditioned to the mind, the body's going to say, whoa, get back to the feeling bad and feeling guilty. We're going to go, whoa, get back to the feeling bad and feeling guilty. because we don't know what it's like to make that choice that could maybe make us feel better. Because that's the known. When we're constantly in a state of not being confident, we're constantly in a state of self-negativity, you find comfort in that. Because that's what's familiar. That's what you've been doing so long. That's what you've ingrained into yourself to feel comfortable with. And you're so afraid of feeling the unknown of the good that you don't even allow yourself to experience it. If the body has been conditioned to the mind, that's when we get that like, whoa, 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 whoa. When we can bring visualization into the present, and we can remember to do the things we visualized ourselves, then we can teach the body to feel before it happens, to feel the good before it happens, to feel the win before you even get it. We can learn how to live in that moment of good before we even get there. So we have to remember to feel that way. We have to practice feeling that way. And the more we feel that way, the more we believe in our future. When we get good at already feeling like we are our future, we stop looking for that future, and that's when magic happens. Opportunities come your way. Things we want start literally finding you. When you're not so focused on going, this is something I'm learning in my pageant. I have wanted to win this certain title for so long, and I have been so stressed and so working hard for it and so running ahead of myself, like thinking of all these other things, all this thing that could happen, this thing and this and this and this. I'm not living in my conscious moment, and I want it too badly that it runs away from me and I lose it. But the moment that I step into consciousness and I focus on what's in front of me, what I can do in the moment, and I focus on learning how to feel the good energy and acting as if I almost already have it, that comes to me. When you want something so bad, it's like a magnet, you're pushing it away. The magnets that have like the same charge, they go, you can't put them together. But once you learn to stop caring so much about it and you turn your back to it, it goes, and it comes right to you. It's all about the journey as well. Have to enjoy the journey just as much. Exactly. But sometimes this may not always work. And the sometimes being some people are in such severe lack and depression that it creates a state where we can't hear anything, because no new information can enter that is equal to the emotion that that person is experiencing. Sometimes you are so stuck in feeling an emotion. You are so focused on that emotion that you can't make change. Anything somebody says to you, anything that comes your way, it's like you have this little dome around yourself. It's like, this is my comfort and I refuse to leave it, and this is exactly where I want to stay because my emotions are so high and this is all I know, that something tries to come in, right? And it's like, boom, nope, can't go in. We miss so many things. Yes, when we are so stuck in our past trauma, we don't let ourselves enjoy new journey and experiences. Exactly. I'm so glad that you're getting this. Because nothing is equal to that. Nothing is equal to that big of an emotion that you're allowing yourself to relive over and over and over. So you can give the person the answer to the question sometimes, and they're not even going to hear you. They'll argue against you. The only person that can get up, or I guess the only person that can get, if you're feeling that way, the only person that can get you out of that emotional state is you. By acknowledging that. Acknowledging it. Beginning where we said, of starting to become into consciousness and catching that, seeing the things that we have allowed ourselves to justify for ourselves. You have to come into a state of consciousness and be honest with yourself and admit to yourself why you're doing things the way that you're doing them. Maybe it's fear. And if you remember the definition of fearless, it's recognizing that there's fear and moving, like going forwards anyways. And do you know how many little girls told me yesterday when I asked them what fearless meant? They say, oh, it means you're not afraid. And I was like, well, I don't know about you, but I don't think that's very realistic. It's about recognizing fear and moving through it anyways. health and wellness can be just as infectious as disease, right? When we see others, so this is another thing. We might want to surround ourselves with others that are achieving and doing good things, or have similar stories that have gotten out of situations like us themselves. And the reason for that being is because sometimes when we see others do it, we say, oh, I can do that too. The awareness and the possibility increases when we see truth inside someone else. We are all a work in progress, and you can literally be anybody that you want. We have to lay down our identity when it comes time to create. Sometimes we're so stuck in an idealized identity that we can't change, and it actually undermines your life. We have to make up out of mind to come out of a resting state and say, I'm going to change. I'm going to make this change for myself. Can't do it for them. Can't do it for her. Can't do it for him. You have to do it for yourself. And it has to be so deep in your core and articulate what it means to you. Again, you can't just say like, oh, I'm going to work out this year so that people view me differently. Sometimes we do things because we feel like we have something to prove to somebody else. Oh, because we feel like this person wants to see me in this light. This person wants to see me fit and active. And so like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stress myself about getting this done. No, you have to have a meaning that is so deep within your core of why you want it to be able to make that change. Thank you, Courage. You have to find your core reason. You can't do it for someone else. So the more that we fascinate about an experience, we actually start to feel that emotion and that future ahead of time. So make it a good one. We look at our old identity and remind ourselves of who we want to become until we become that person, right? Look at the flaws that you may see within yourself and remind you of those things that you're trying to get over so that you can remind yourself how to become the person that you want to become. And it's kind of the same thing. I always say, like, fake it until you make it. But the way that I like to say it instead is practice until you become it. So that's halfway through this lesson. And that's a lot. Like I said, it's information overload. So I will repost this to YouTube so that you guys can find it. Dale, thank you for the heart. Me, good to see you. Welcome in. I'll repost this to the